Welcome back to Blatantly Honest with Makaila Nichols. Today, I caught up with Brittni Schroeder. She's a business coach and a marketing strategist for female entrepreneurs. Brittni worked as a high school senior photographer for over 10 years and owned and operated Mosey magazine up until 2017. She's had her work featured in the Wall Street Journal, Good Morning America, and several other publications. Brittni has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 10 years. In May of 2017, she lost her 14-year-old son, Gage. In efforts to help his friends and others heal, she founded her own nonprofit called the Compassion Club. It's an honor to have you on the show, Brittni. I think I'd like to start this episode talking a little bit about your journey and where you got to where you are today. So, where is the best starting point for you? Where like, all right, this is what made Brittni Brittni.
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so I won't like bore you with all the details of birth, but no. So I grew up in a small town in Utah, farming community, one stoplight out in the country, and then went to college, got married. I started to have kids and I'm like, oh, this is what I want. Like, I want to be a mom. Like, I just always it always been my plan to be a mom. And, but I always wanted to have something like that. I'm really big on like empowering like women. And I never wanted people to ask my kids, what does your mom do? And I didn't want them to say she cooks and cleans. Like, which is fine because I do cook and clean, but I wanted them, I wanted them to say that I did so much more. I wanted them to say, oh, my mom runs marathons. My mom does this. My mom does that. And so I've always been really big on just like empowering women and yes, like you can be a great mom, but we have the potential to do like so much great in the world. So I always kind of had that in the back of my head. But when I had my second son, it was right when blogging, this is totally going to age me. I am vintage, let me tell you. But it was right when blogging started to become really big and everybody's taking like all these like awesome pictures and I had graduated with my bachelor's degree in something super random that didn't have anything to do with that. But I said, I want to learn how to be a photographer. And when I do things, I go hard. So I just like self-taught, took courses, like I learned everything there was about photography and decided that I wanted to do photography. Then right after I decided to do it, my husband's, they cut his division and we moved to El Paso, Texas. And, but I was starting off like my photography business and I decided that I wanted to work. I loved fashion and I love teenagers. That's my jam. Like both of those I love so much. And so I was like, this is what I want to do. So I did high school senior photography. And then shortly after that, I started a photography magazine and that's kind of what I did. Wow. So for a while, and it was awesome. It was so rewarding. I remember watching a show, it was Oprah, and it was talking about what's our calling in life? Like, what were we meant to do? And I always say that my superpower is I'm a builder and a connector. I love to build people up and I love to connect with people. Those are my two superpowers. And so I just felt like this is what I was meant to do. I get to work with these amazing girls and I get to show them how beautiful they are, and not with just the way they look and that I could take good pictures, but just talking to them and connecting with them. And I joke that I always knew so much high school drama because I love teenagers. I love to talk to people. I love all of that, so that's kind of what led me to that point in my life where I was like, this is what I was meant to do. So, then shortly after that, I always wanted to go to third world countries. And I kept saying, I'm going to go back to school and be a nurse so that I can go to these third world countries and I can do Peace Corps or these humanitarian trips. And I never really thought that my photography would get me there. And I teamed up with this nonprofit and they had schools in Haiti. They educated kids in Haiti. And I went and I photographed and volunteered and helped. And I was like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, is I am supposed to like help these kids get educated. I'm supposed to help them. And again, that was just another like pivoting time in my life where I was like, this is what I was supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. And just, just such like an amazing experience. So,
Wow.
then you want me to keep going? You want me to keep going, girl?
I love it. You were on
Okay.
it, on the money. I just can't even imagine. I mean, going to like those third world countries and being
Oh,
able to capture those moments. I mean, and
yeah.
you're building, you're building them up and you're connecting because, people over here back in the States probably they're not exposed to that. So how did
Oh,
that
no.
experience like alter you?
So I think, gratitude, I think, is something that a lot of people innately have, but I think it's something that some people have to practice, right? And I think innately, I've always been a really grateful person, always just been like, oh, I'm so lucky, or I'm so blessed that I have these opportunities. But it just took it to a whole new level because I ended up going over there and just loving it. And I remember one of my like mentors and one of my dear friends it was her nonprofit, right? And she said to me on our first trip there, she said, you don't choose Haiti, Haiti chooses you. And I felt like that it chose me, and it chose me to help these kids. And so even though my photography took me there, it like, I was just like, I want to help these kids. And I remember even coming home to like 2 cars, a beautiful home, meals to eat, where a lot of these kids were living in like shacks and lucky if they got 1 meal a day, and kind of feeling like in a funk. Like I call it like the Haiti like funk, where you come home and you're just like, why was I born? Like, why do I have these blessings? Why do I have all these opportunities? What was so special about me? And I think it's pretty normal. A lot of people go through like, oh, I'm going to adopt a kid from Haiti because there's all these orphans. And I remember one night I was out for a jog and it just like came to me and it was like, you were not meant to help one child. You were meant to help many children. And it was just like, yes, I'm going to. Shortly after that, I was put on the board of directors for PR. And this kind of just started my journey where I was like, I was on a mission to help get all these kids educated. And one of the things I love that I learned really quick is you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. And just how powerful it is to educate and to empower people. And that is how you make a difference, by empowering people, by education, by, like giving them like something that nobody can ever take away. And that's an education. And so it was just like, it was such a journey, and it kind of like, it was a game changer for me. I think of all these like experiences in my life, and I think of things that have changed who I am. And that was one of them. Like, it was definitely like so life-changing to me. So
It sounds
yeah.
it. I can't imagine just being able to have that experience and work with those kids. And like you said, back to that quote, if you give them a fish and then you teach them to fish, it's so true. Education is
Yeah.
something that you can't take away from someone once they have it. And it's so important, especially like even here, to educate people on a lot of these variety of topics, and going back to the third world countries and like just letting people know like, hey, this exists. And like, this is,
Yeah.
we're so blessed to be, have a roof over our head and be able to do this and use technology and all this stuff. Cause a lot of people don't have that. And it's just like, whatever, we take it for granted. So
Yeah.
with that experience, what message, okay, well, I guess let me ask, how old were you when you were working with that organization?
I think I started I went for 4 years, where I was on the board for 4 years. And so, oh, what was it? I mean, I was in my late 30s. I would say in my 30s, late 30s. So
So
mid to late 30s. Yeah. So
how did that experience, what message did you instill in your kids because of it?
I mean, definitely like gratitude. One of the things like is that I would say to my kids, something that I would catch them saying is, oh, I'm so hungry, I'm starving, and I would say, you are not starving. Like, you do not know what starving is. And just having gratitude for like education, it's a luxury over there, and having a mom and a dad, healthcare, like so many things. So I think it was just teaching my kids like, hey, you're so blessed. But I did have a moment too, over there where I remember, just thinking, coming home and you'd get that Haiti funk, like, oh, why do I have this? And I remember having this moment where I thought, I was blessed with these, like with this life. I was blessed with these skills, with a keen mind, with a education, with, communication skills, all these things. Why was I blessed with them? And I had this thought that it's like, if I don't use those skills to help others, then shame on me. Like, shame on me, because we have all of these amazing opportunities in life and blessings. And if we don't use them for the good, then shame on us for not doing it.
Let's kind of shift into, because I looked at your website and your website is
Yeah.
phenomenal and just so open and honest, and you kind of really touch upon like that personal development. Was that something that, the Haiti experience, and has that always been something that you're like, I need to go after this, I need to continue to develop into these gifts that I was given? Has that always been with you, or is that kind of learned?
I think, as you get older, you have more of an awareness of the gifts that you have. And, like I said, I'm a huge advocate. Education is something I'm really, really passionate about. And so, and I don't just like talk it, I live it. Like I'm constantly trying to get better and improve myself. And so I think just, having the awareness. And I think as you get older, you kind of come into like yourself, and you're younger, and you are all about yourself, like that's just how it is, like everything's about you. And teenagers, we're kind of selfish when we're a teenager, like even now it's like selfies, like this, that, and now it's, as you get older, those things are like less important to you. And it's more about, like what kind of legacy can you leave to people, So I think kind of, that Haiti was a big one for me. I think shortly after that, I call it like my midlife crisis. And I just was like, I was really successful. I had a really successful photography business. I had a magazine. I was in the Wall Street Journal. I was on Good Morning America. I started, people were asking me, I was judging. I judged Miss New Mexico. I just had all these opportunities, but I started, I think we all kind of have those moments where we're just like, what really matters? Does all of this matter? Like, is this really important? And I look back now, and it was definitely like a tender mercy, but it was at the time, my oldest son he was going into high school as a freshman. And I remember just feeling like panic, like like, oh my gosh, like I only have 4 years left with him.
Mhm.
And, Gage was, he was my oldest. He was gifted in every subject. Ever since he was little, he just talked to everybody. I mean, he was like my hardest kid, because I would turn around and he would be talking to strangers, And I remember a trip we were in Mexico, and he was sitting next to me, and he had to have been like maybe 8 or 9, maybe a little bit older than that. And I fall asleep. I woke up and I was like, where is he? Where is he? And we look up, and he's up talking to the flight attendants, leaning up against the chair. And I mean, it was just always that he just, he talked to everybody, and he was so intelligent and just wise beyond his years. So not only like was he my son, but he was my friend. I think I do that with all my kids. I talk to them like they are adults and they're my friends. And so anyway, so I just, I had this panic, like, oh my gosh, I only have 4 years. And I took a step back from everything. I took a step back from like my career. I, decided that I was going to like not take as many clients, that I was, we decided let's sell the magazine. I had a business, my business partner at the time, and, let's just take it back. And, I like that whole year, was just devoted to just being a mom. And these other things were just like on the side. And, I look at that as it was a tender mercy from God. And because then in May of 2017, Gage passed away. He had an accident and he passed away. He was almost 15. But I look at it and it was, sorry.
It's okay.
Like I was given like I didn't have 4 years left with him. Like I had 1 year, but I'm so grateful. I'm grateful that I was given like that blessing of, just all these wonderful memories of him. And I joke that, there wasn't a time where there wasn't skateboards in our house. We had just remodeled our kitchen and it was just trash, like dents. And I just didn't care, and I'm like such an OCD, like clean freak person, and everything has to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And I didn't care because it was just like, it was like his happiness, his friends. And it really was just, it was just such a blessing. And, I'm grateful that I got like almost 15 years as his mom. And I'm just grateful for like, just all of the blessings that came with him and with everything after. So, yeah. Do you want me to talk about now, like what happened next?
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. And again, I cannot even imagine. I just can't. But based on everything you're doing and, his legacy, he really made an impact. And just watching you talk about him, even like on the airplane, like I didn't know him, but I could picture a little kid leaning and just smiling and talking, and he must be so proud.
Yeah. So then shortly after his death, we decided, people started sending like flowers and plants. And I said, no, I don't want this. That's, it's a waste of money. Please don't spend it. And my friend said, why don't we start like a scholarship fund in his name? And if people want to donate, they can. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So we decided that we were going to start the Gage Schroeder Compassion Scholarship. And just within days, like over $30,000 of donations were made. And, it was just really cool because like, as a mom, I was constantly apologizing about him because he was always talking, like always like, and I don't want to bug people and talking. And it ended up being like the biggest blessing for so many people. And tons. And after that, the most amazing things started happening. We started getting letters to our house, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters of how he had impacted their life because he was so kind to everybody. And he didn't discriminate with age. He didn't discriminate with race, nothing. He was just friends with everybody. And he had a garbage can cleaning business. He was called the Can Man. And he would go on a 4-wheeler and go and pick up people's garbage cans and come back and power wash them. And I started getting letters from like all these neighbors and people that he had just made an impact. And they would say, we didn't even need our garbage cans cleaned. We just loved him. And he would come and like, was so nice to my kids and, but then it was just like all these letters from these kids too, that we were getting, these teenagers, because at the time he was a freshman in high school. And, he was in 9th grade and he was gifted. So he was friends with all of like, all the academics, all the nerds, whatever, but he was like a varsity wrestler. So he was friends with all the athletes and just everybody, and it was just like such an amazing thing. We started getting all these letters and some of them were like so heartbreaking. They would say things like, he saved my life. I didn't have any friends. I mean, there was a few that were like, I was going to kill myself. And he came up to me and just talked to me, just like these random acts of kindness. And he was like that. Like he was very intuitive and always thinking of other people. And several people just said that he would say, hey, how are you doing today? And they'd say, good. And he would go back to them and say, no, really, like, how are you doing today? Like he could tell something was wrong. And so it was just like such like an awesome thing, you know. It's like, as a parent, you know, you always, you know, I knew my kid was awesome, but like I had no idea the impact that he had on so many people. And so as we started getting these letters, these kids started coming to our house and they just wanted to be with us and just to feel like the love and his presence. And people, like, I mean, knock after knock after knock, and all these kids, all these teenagers just like were at our house and they just wanted to be with our family and to grieve. And so as you know, we were doing this, you know, backing up a little bit, I've always been a huge advocate in like serving others. Like I remember even early in my marriage, if something was going on, or like, gosh, life's hard, or we're struggling, you know, my husband and I would say, we need to serve. Like we need to find somebody and we need to serve other people. And I just remember like thinking like, we have to help these kids. We have to help these kids heal. And we need to teach them to serve others. We need to teach them to love other people and to serve other people. And one of my favorite quotes is by Tony Robbins, and he says, we only suffer when we think of ourselves. And I love that. And so during this whole time, we just were like, we have to help them. And so at first it started off like, let's do a support group at the school, but let's call it the Compassion Club. And we went for the first time, we announced it, and there wasn't even a place to sit. It was standing room only. Like there was just so many like kids. And we started off just telling stories about Gage, and then let's go do a random act of kindness. Let's go do something kind for somebody. And at the time I had a kid in every school. I had one in high school, I had one in middle school, and I had one in elementary. And so we wanted to help our children as well. So we started clubs in all three schools, just kind of winging it. We were just winging it, like, oh, what should we do this week? And we would come up but the high school, they were the ones that needed it the most, that age. And at first it was once a week, and then they're like, it's the best part of my week. Can you do it every week? And so we were going every single week, and it was during their lunch time. We did have an anonymous donor donate like $3,000 to feed the kids once a month for, you know, the rest of the year. But we just started doing these random acts of kindness. Like we would write like kind words on Post-it notes, and we put thousands of Post-it notes all over the school. One time it was a football home game, and we stayed after and cleaned up the trash so we could give the janitors the night off to spend with their families. One of my favorites was we took a bunch of pizzas to school because it was during lunchtime, and we said, go find somebody in the hall sitting by themselves and just get to know them, eat pizza with them. And kids came back in tears because some of the kids they sat by did not have any friends. And I remember even a couple of them saying, this is the first time anybody's talked to me all year. And just like how sad that is, that is our world, you know? And, you know, we just did, you know, we did a bunch of different things. And so then at this time, we're getting all these messages from kids and parents all over the US saying, how can I get this at my kid's school? Like my kid is struggling. My kid is having a hard time, you know, and we're just like, we have to help these kids. And depression, anxiety, you know, eating disorders, all these things are at an all-time high in our society right now. And it's something that is just, it's not a priority. It's not a priority. And I always say, you can give these kids the best academic programs, you can give them the best athletic programs, but if they do not learn to be a good human and learn to be resilient and cope, they will not survive. They will not survive. And it, you know, it was just, it's just, I think I've always worked with teenagers. I told you, teenagers are my jam. I love them. Like in fact, if I'm in a room with adults, I'd rather go hang out with teenagers. Like I just love kids. but it's also been really hard just to see like what's going on in our world, and just, the anxiety. And, like, can you imagine being an anxious person to begin with, and then living in the world that we're in right now of just like love and acceptance and confusion? And so we have to teach people, we have to teach these kids, we have to teach them, they have to serve others, they have to accept others, they have to respect others. And so we formed a nonprofit, and I put together a group of educators and administrators and parents, and together we created a curriculum of like the 12 values that we think are important, like kindness, charity, forgiveness. There's a bunch of them. And we put together this curriculum, and we talk about, so we share stories, and some of them are about gauge and quotes and just activities on how we can serve. And it's been great. We have clubs all over the US, and it's so rewarding. Yeah, it's so rewarding to hear like these parents and these teachers just saying thank you. People, we just need to belong. People need to belong to something that is good and like positive and helps other people. And it's been amazing. So we sell the curriculum to the schools, and the money that we get from the curriculum, we give back, and we give scholarships to just good kids. And since May of 2017, we've given over $20,000 in scholarships and grants to kids. And I love it because, the people we give scholarships to, they a lot of them write me letters, and they say like, this was the best part of like school for me, was like serving and being good and putting good in the world. It feels so good. It feels so good to be kind. It feels so good to, like help other people. Mm-hmm. And we have to learn that, like we're losing the connection, especially now more than ever. We're always on our phones. We're always, now at Zoom, we don't touch, we don't hug. It's like, you might, and that's what I have been seeing, is like, you might have like, like whatever, 20,000 followers on social media, but like, those are not real connections. Oh. And it's the same with like drugs and alcohol. Like we see all these kids that they are getting high but that they're so lonely. They're, mm-hmm. High and drunk and, whatever it is, but then they leave, they're by themselves, and they're so lonely. And, like in the anxiety, and they feel like they're missing out. And we have to have the connection. We have to connect with people. And how you do that is by like doing good together and talking and getting to know people. And unfortunately, we're losing that connection. I just think of even what's going on in our world right now. Half the things we put on social media, we would never say those things to somebody's face, because we would see the emotion. Mm-hmm. And, it's just it's so damaging that, the social media, it can be such a good tool, but it's like, it's destroying like these kids. It's destroying like relationships, and we need that. It's hateful. As like, yeah. And I always say, I'm like, the biggest issue right now is a humanity issue. It's a humanity issue, because we do not respect and we are not kind to one another. And, and so I just think it's interesting. Some kids don't get this at home. Some kids don't have like a mom or a dad to come home to that are like, hey, you need to be nice. You need to like, do respect those things. Like respect other people and love other people. And, I always try to teach my kids, like, hurt people. When people hurt you and they say mean things, they're hurt. Like, have compassion for those people, and so it's been so healing, to like turn something like this into like, to help other people, it's been really great. So
it is incredible, these compassion clubs that you started, just hearing the stories, especially like, eating with someone. I was a kid that ate alone. No one would eat with me. And just the fact that you're doing that and acknowledging that is so important, because I wish someone would have done that for me. And does this heal, aside from healing, do you feel more connected to Gage by doing this? Like how are you doing through all this?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think I feel like this was his legacy, and I think, after his passing and working a lot with the youth and everything, people kept saying, you should be a life coach, like you're helping all these people. And so I was like, what's a life coach? Like, that's hokey, right? Like,
So hokey.
like, bring me the oils, bring me the crystals, whatever. But anyways, I started listening to like some podcasts and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. And so I did end up going and getting certified as a life coach. And it was honestly like such an amazing thing for me. It helped me so much in every aspect of my life and my relationships, but just to be able to help other people, just one more tool to help other people. And so, it's been challenging lately because lots of places aren't in school. I mean, we're so distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that's been kind of challenging is it's just not a priority. I would get a ton of kids that would reach out to me that they need this. And then I would try to talk to administrators, and it's just not a priority. They would not make it a priority. So that was frustrating, but we've done a ton of good. A lot of really good things have come out of it, and we're still working, and we're still, we need it now more than ever. We need to, learn to love each other and have compassion.
Yeah. What is your hope, your ultimate hope for these compassion clubs?
I one thing right now is just like, again, awareness, like, I think that as adults, we get so caught up into our, what's going on like in our adult lives that we forget that these little people they're the next generation. And, we set such an example. And so my hopes are that it becomes like a priority, and that we can get more in schools, and that we can, it is a thing, social emotional learning is what they're calling it at the schools. So it's starting to get more recognition, but I just hope that we can, like, that we realize like that we need this more than ever. We need to teach kids like how important it is to be kind and have compassion and accepting and respect, all these things that we're kind of missing, the big picture. I always say, like, you can have it all, but if you cannot be a good person, you will fail at life. It doesn't matter like what you do. If you cannot be a good person, you will fail at life, so that's kind of my hope, just to, is to grow it and get more clubs in more schools, more awareness.
That's incredible. Yeah, I know this world needs it now more than ever. And it's like, what example are we leading for our kids, for our youth? It's just, everything is so hate. And, they talk about climate change being the thing. I'm like, okay, no, it doesn't matter. If humanity is not a thing, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I think it all goes back to humanity and how we treat and love and respect one another, despite differences, despite opinion and everything, and just remembering to be kind. I mean, that's like a universal thing, is just be kind, and people have forgotten that. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for all the hard work you're doing, and Gage's legacy is clearly just powerful. And so thank you for doing what you're doing.
No, I think just, I as a parent and as somebody who works a lot with youth, just, we need to have more conversations. We need to make it a priority. We need to teach, to serve and to have compassion. It can, like, you might not agree with like, compassion is not mean you condone a behavior. Compassion means you're compassionate for that person. It doesn't, we're going to see people that are doing things that we don't agree with, but we still need to have compassion for them and understanding. And I try to do that. And, I've been trying to do it a lot more lately, but just instead of, when I feel a negative emotion like anger or frustration, I try to turn it into compassion. And how can I feel compassion for that person instead of anger. You know, we only know like this much of the story. And
Always.
I know you guys are listening, but I'm holding up my fingers really small. But, you know, and it's just like, I mean, looking at you, you know, here you are, you're like gorgeous, you're a model, but it was like, people probably had prejudice against you, you know, like I tell my daughter that I say it's called pretty girl syndrome. Just because you're pretty, girls will hate you.
Yeah.
Girls will hate you. People will hate you because you're pretty. And if you're quiet, then you're stuck up. And you know what I mean? And it's just like, we don't know people's stories. We don't know, really quick before we finish, but there's one activity that like is so impactful that I do. I remember I'm a really confident person. I had a great mom, and but I've always been like a very confident person. And I remember right after Gage passed away, and I was flying out to Michigan to speak and do a fundraiser. And I remember just getting some food, and I remember the person. It was at Subway, and I remember the Subway person looking at me, and she was kind of like timid, and you know, didn't put her head up, and she talked to me but wouldn't make eye contact. And I remember just thinking, I wonder what she thinks of me. I wonder, like, she looks at me and she probably thinks I'm this super confident person, but if she only knew how broken and lost and confused I am inside. I was still so heavy in grief. And I just remember, you know, leaving and walking through the airport and looking at people looking at me and thinking, if they only knew how broken I was, you know. And we do this activity with our compassion clubs, and we give the kids a piece of paper, and it's a printable, and we print them out, and it says, if you only knew me, you'd know. And then it's a blank, and we give them to all of the kids. And I did it at my son's school, and I live in Houston. And I remember passing out, and here's these big, like, football players and these cute cheerleaders and these academics, and just like a mix of just like all these people. And not everybody did it. I think I got back like 35 cards out of, you know, over 40, and 30 of them were, I have an eating disorder. I am on drugs. I'm abused. I am lonely. I mean, it was like I said, like these big football players, and, you know, that were writing these. And I mean, as a mom, I could not stop crying. I could not, like, I left and I just felt so like sad for these kids. And I think that we always need to remember that they're, you know, like, we don't really know. You know, if you really knew, you would know. And we need to remember that everybody has a story. Like, nobody does not have a story. We always have something, and just remember to just show compassion. But, you know, my message is, you know, as adults, as, you know, whoever, like, this needs to be a priority, like kindness and compassion. It needs to be a priority that we teach our children acceptance and love, because they model us, they see what we're doing, and, you know, it says a lot. So that's my message, girl. That's my message.
That's a very powerful message. And I think that activity is great. And not the responses you got were great, but the fact that it's like we all are going through something, and we all deal and cope in different ways. So thank you for doing this for the kids. Just going back to the thing you said about Haiti, you know, you're like, I have to help these kids. And little did you know, you'd help so many kids back home.
Be bold, be you, be blatantly honest.